Nick de Cesare, or commonly known as LS, Last Shadow 9 or Low Standards, is arguably one of the most important community members we have in League of Legends, especially if you consider the esports scene. Seeing that LS is such a big personality within the League community, I have taken the liberty of cataloging some of his most notable memes, dramas, and stories within his life in, of course, the meta format of an iceberg, where we rank the most commonly known information to the least known information about him. As we go further down, we will also discuss darker things about his past or LS in general. Some of the things on the iceberg are pretty similar to each other, so I might at times hit two champions with one Pantheon queue, if you get what I mean. With that being said, let's tackle the big iceberg of LS. Researching these types of videos takes a lot of time. If you'd like to support me and the work I do, consider using my affiliate link to buy cheap RP, masterwork chests, event passes, or league orbs with my affiliate link in the description or the comments below. Or you can use my coupon code HAS. I also have a Patreon with the behind the scenes content and other Q&As if that suits you better, and also make sure that you subscribe. The first year of the LS iceberg mainly revolves around memes that came to fruition in LS's early history as a content creator. To recap, and in case you didn't know, LS first joined the league scene back in 2013 after being in the StarCraft community, which was pretty huge back in the early 2010s. During his whole league career, he has been a caster, coach, and a content creator. The first year also showcases some of his takes and philosophy on the game, which serves as an introduction to LS. The mention of opgg roast refers to an early moment in LS's streaming career when people could donate or subscribe to his Twitch in exchange for an opgg review. Most of these opgg reviews would of course be roasts, as they primarily would comprise silver to platinum players. The roasts would be extremely entertaining for the viewer base and would serve as an incentive for people to keep donating or subscribing. This also ties in with the Twitch Prime meme, where back in those days LS was memeing how much he loved Twitch Prime and would constantly advertise about using your Twitch Prime because you can subscribe for free.
Alright, Coinstar. Wait, how is this possible? Coinstar, I want you to answer. Alright, we're gonna have a series of questions right now. Coinstar, listen. Alright, let me ask you three questions, Coinstar. Okay? Number one, do you want to get better at the game? Number one, yeah, you play too much League. Alright. Okay. Number two, Coinstar. Now, your answer to number two might affect if we get to number three, by the way. Are you gonna subscribe, Coinstar? Because I couldn't help but notice that the Twitch Prime's there, but the hood's not there, and I'm hoping it's an error. All right, so question three is:
you've been mid-silver for several years. This year you finished silver 1. How long have you been following my channel? Let's see. You were subbed for 25 months. You're not even subbed anymore. What is going on? Wait, I feel like League content is feeding that addiction. Okay, that makes sense. Look, speaking of an addiction, I want you to get gold for the first time ever. So here, I'm gonna write you a fucking prescription, not an addiction, okay? Now, this prescription, you might also get actually hooked on it, sort of like painkillers, because this is gonna be a painkiller for your fucking account's MMR. You're gonna need to start playing Annie. You're gonna play Annie, you're gonna play 100 games, you are going to get gold. You are going to get hooked on Annie, like some people get hooked on Vicodin. Okay?
This meme was not exclusive to LS though, as other content creators would use it like ninjas, so it was more of a trend. No Boots Kassadin refers to a time where Kassadin was obviously overpowered, having over 99% ban rate, and it's also a specific build philosophy, I would say, from LS. Effectively, he was inventing No Boots Kassadin with this philosophy, or you could call it thought, I guess, rather than philosophy. Previously, there was a time where Riftwalk didn't have an exorbitant mana cost when you used it multiple times. Rather than doubling the mana cost, it linearly added 100 mana to subsequent casts. Moreover, the stack duration used to be somewhere around 8 seconds rather than the 15 seconds we have today. With that in mind, one could use Kassadin's ultimate whenever one pleased, and due to having a flash almost always up, one would not require boost for mobility, and you could just rather build another item to gain more utility or damage. I'm not entirely sure if this is 100% accurate, but it's what I could find on this topic. Rap God LS refers to an instrumental rap song being paired with LS's vocal audio. He was originally reviewing the Caps POV from G2 Esports vs Origin Game 1 Season 9 finals of the LEC Spring in 2019. He would rapidly start to analyze how the game should proceed.
Ryze loses all of his fucking HP, you crash the minion wave onto the turret, next minion wave's nowhere close by, so you just throw all your spells onto him, he runs underneath the turret because he doesn't want to miss the giant.
But the community thought that this was very reminiscent of Eminem and his Rap God song, and thus
him inside of the lane, pull Olaf into mid. Ryze loses all of his fucking HP, you crash the minion wave onto the turret, next minion wave's nowhere close by, so you just throw all your spells onto him, he runs underneath the turret because he doesn't want to miss the giant minion wave. Doesn't matter about his spell flux because he just got rooted, your aftershock is going off, you're not taking a bad trade, you back up your recall, you arrive for the next minion wave. This is fucking rocket science.
Holy shit, you're so fucking terrible!
I mean, this rap song is pretty banger, but this would also be the inception of the lyrical snake Lil LS, or the lyrical 7th meme nickname. The Legend of Silver Kayle is LS's most viral YouTube video to date, with almost 800,000 views, posted 8 years ago. Interestingly enough, his most viral video is also the first year where LS would be very active as a content creator, suggesting that he never topped the classical banger. The Legend of Silver Kayle is a humorous video where a silver or a gold player who had the Silver Kayle skin would get coached by LS. LS would go mental boom while spectating his gameplay and is honestly a worthy watch for yourself. Now, there were a few videos that was similar to Silver Kayle that we won't really go into this video, but they would never really top this one. Annie refers to the champion obviously, and LS's advocacy of playing Annie. During the opgg roasts, he would also prescribe these low elo players with playing Annie. This was mainly because playing simple champions like Annie, or arguably Malphite or Garen as well, would make these low elo players worry more about decision making rather than worrying about complex mechanics. So basically worrying about macro and less about micro. Annie just has a lot of point and click abilities and has an easy playstyle of bursting, therefore it all revolves around what decisions you are making, whether they be correct or wrong, basically leaving the mechanical part behind. LS has almost always seen Annie as a viable champ for all levels of play. Viable obviously doesn't mean pick or ban, as Annie would of course be open to counters in pro play. All in all, Annie would be the prescription drug to cure low elo. Liandry Salesman is a meme term referring to LS himself, obviously playing on the back of the initials LS. LS was a pioneer when he attempted to popularize the item Liandry's Torment over the commonly built item Morellonomicon. Before, in Season 8 and onwards, many pro players built the item Morellonomicon, which was a bait, and LS argued that Liandry was a much better alternative. Morello gave Magic Pen, which is probably why a lot of pros built the item, while also giving the reduced healing reduction debuff on enemies. However, the issue is that flat magic penetration only would work effectively versus low resistant enemies, and you can even get this by just building Oblivion Orb. Upgrading the Oblivion Orb to Morello would be useless in most cases, since the Grievous Wound debuff it wasn't useful and sometimes just outright worthless. LS would propose Liandry's Torment as the best possible alternative, as you would be able to deal up to 10% increased damage on a champion and also apply a burn which deals a percentage of an enemy's maximum health over time, and if that champion was either slowed or immobilized, they would even have a more increased percentage max health damage to them, and as a result of his constant advocacy of building Liandry would eventually give him the nickname Liandry Salesman. Cookies and Scorch is a smaller part of LS's larger philosophy when it comes to League of Legends. He would argue that these two runes are overused and bad in comparison of the other alternatives available. In many cases of LCK, LS would see that players have had 3 cookies in their inventory simply because not much has happened in lane that would warrant their usage. Regardless, pro players just still went Cookies and Scorch. The 6-minute video goes more in depth about this than the video needs to, so have a look if you're interested. Scaling philosophy, or as I would rather dub it, the LS doctrine, is a school of thought when it comes to League of Legends. This is of course spearheaded and derived from LS, although some coaches have independently had similar opinions, such as Veigar V2. LS's philosophy branches into 2 things. The first branch is, as I dub it, the XYZ axioms. The name is based on a nickname LS favors if he ever changed his name. The XYZ axioms is his way of analyzing gameplay and decision making, and it follows a rigid amount of axioms that amount to a system for analyzing League of Legends. The second branch is of his drafting philosophy, which I call the scaling principle. The scope of this video won't go in depth into LS's teachings, as they could literally amount to a League Bible or something like that. And of course, I'm also going to make a video about this in the future, so it's more easily accessible rather than scouring thousands of clips. You see, LS has a lot of things documented, but much of this is just spread around on the internet in bits. In essence, the scaling principle revolves around the concept of scaling in League of Legends. It follows the principle that how well any champion, any combination of items will perform in the later stages of the game, and thus how can the risks of loss in the early game be minimized to reach this optimized game state in search for victory. By following the scaling principle, you will therefore see scaling drafts being favored in games usually, and many of LS's famous advocations would stem from this. This is for example the Enchanter solo laners, where you have Iron top or mid, Soraka mid, and etc. Obviously, the scaling principle is not a god-given ultimatum to go for. For example, scaling is relative, just how time is relative. Have a look at this clip of LS explaining that where T1 has objectively bad scaling champions, like Renekton, whereas Nongshim Red Force has better scaling comp overall, but it's still T1 favored.
How does Team 1 team scale? Because scaling is not a word that means that you just have late game champions. That's not what the word means. Scaling is a relative term. So relative to Nongshim's team composition, T1's champions are better. They are better with more items in the late game. Mostly because of Viego, and because of Rumble. Against gnome shims like close quarter, hard dive, engage combat, Renekton goes up to like 4 items, and he's pretty reliably rewarded because his job is just to be a defensive lineman for Jinx.
The scaling principle also falls under the first branch of teachings, namely the XYZ axioms. There are cases where scaling is not optimal or just outright win games due to relativism, as stated previously, but nevertheless, scaling does make champions really strong, which is why scaling is commonly associated with LS's philosophy. There's a very interesting article by Invent Global where they interview LS and he shed some light on how he views the game and the drafting philosophy he has. You can have a read about this while you wait for my in-depth video if you are interested. Draft dystopias are popular in-depth videos that critically review a team's draft. Essentially, it is a dystopia because the drafts by a certain team are blundered, meaning that players have to play at a disadvantage. These videos are pretty long, but actually provide a very insightful discussion into draft and also showcases LS's draft philosophy. Various concepts are also introduced in these long discussion videos. If you are an aspiring coach or even a seasoned veteran player, you should, if interested to gain a better perspective on draft and 5v5 scenarios, take a look at these videos. Some coaches are a prodigy when it comes to analyzing, drafting, and strategizing in League of Legends, but some coaches are bad at executing mechanical and decision-making aspects while playing League. Coach, by the way, is a reference to this concept where sometimes LS dies in a League game, blunders, or doesn't know about the fact, and then his community would then spam Coach, by the way, as a response when this happens.
Oh man, well. So if you want to neutralize the Thresh Kalista, you can go Ashe. You can just go Ashe. You're red side Ashe with red Tom Kench. They can't do anything against you. You take teleport, you endlessly wave clear. Kalista and Thresh can't actually fight you, and nothing will happen. Yeah, there it is.
Alright.
Coach, by the way,
okay.
so. Tends to sometimes occur here.
At the same time, this phrase is also used when LS correctly predicts something, so it has a wide variety of usage. You might have not known this before, but LS was previously a sinner until Yosh. Yosh pairs up well with the discussion we had on LS's philosophy. In fact, Yosh is a key person who inspired LS heavily. He is a used Canadian dual citizen from California who played StarCraft just like LS. He played Terran, and in 2009 he had a direct offer from SKT, which is what T1 was named back then. Yosh and LS would eventually spend a lot of time together, especially on Skype. You know, the voice call program before 2016? No? Okay. Anyways, in those discussions together, Yosh basically shaped the way LS thinks about games. Previously, LS was playing super aggressive, used high variance gameplay and mechanics when playing StarCraft. You know, basically your average LeBlanc mid player. Yosh's influence on LS would consequently have an influence in LS's philosophy on League of Legends and other games. It's kind of where his philosophy is kind of derived from. The LS smile is a legendary meme regarding, well, LS smiling. It's accessible via Discord if you just write one of his nicknames. The clip of him smiling originates from a video posted by Artosis, who was a prominent commentator for StarCraft. The video, MLG Columbus, The Foot Race, was a vlog post by Artosis where they were going to watch the Major League Gaming event in 2011 for StarCraft. At around the 7:20 minute mark, Artosis would catch up with LS, and this is where the meme would eventually come to fruit.
We have Last Shadow, the infamous Last Shadow and his infamous friend.
Dude, we got some sick builds, TBC.
You got some sick builds?
Dude, yes.
No, you don't. That's not right.
Pretty fucking close.
We got DDE.
The Bible or the LS dictionary refers to LS's terminology usage. LS has actually coined quite a few terminologies in regards to League of Legends. Some of them are memes and some of them relate to discussing concepts such as cheater recall. There is a 2-page Reddit list of terminologies that LS uses, and well, the reasons why there's 2 pages is because the original poster ran out of words in the first part. Here you're gonna find a definition of a sinner, a saint, the concept of a curve, or who is the beatdown. All of these concepts are important to study LS, but also interesting to get a more in-depth understanding and discussing League of Legends. I have these description in this video if you want to continue reading about that. In 2015, LS conceptualized the usage or concept of using F-keys and advocated that the usage of F-keys is important for improving one's skill. When LS did so, he would come under scrutiny by people mainly stemming from Reddit. These people would disregard what he said, find it useless, and also attack his character. Now, using F-keys has always been a thing in strategy games, and LS took the skill with him from StarCraft when he joined the League of Legends community in 2013. However, he did notice that a lot of players playing MOBAs didn't use the F-keys. While he didn't exactly invent the usage of F-keys, he did popularize it, which in turn branded him later as the Keys Inventor. Western shit is one of the most popular memes in the esports League of Legends community. It's basically a rage clip from LS, which is pretty funny as he asks a player to cut the Western shit while, you know, doing the Western shit.
Don't fucking tilt if you play with me! Like, cut the fucking Western shit! Literally, it's so fucking sickening. I'm the one facing Heimer as a fucking cane. Yeah, and you have the audacity to fucking tilt.
And then the flash finish under turret, so impressive play out of Prey, to say the least. As we enter the later parts of the Dream Team tournament, though, it's important to acknowledge our dedication to heightening the level of competition, and as a result, the Western shit has been cut. First up, we've got a best of 3 between the LMS and Southeast Asia.
This quote, "Cut the Western shit," would also inspire ABPA to name one of his future shows, Cut the Western Shit. This show mainly discussed Western controversial topics such as the League of Legends subreddit mods or the time when Reckless was distraught after a loss in the 2017 Worlds run. Gryffinn is what Ellis calls one of his happiest moments in his esports career. Gryffinn is someone who had been constantly improving and under Ellis's guidance. With Ellis's assistance, Gryffinn managed to get a spot on the Korean T1's academy team, making it potentially the first foreign import to Korea who climbs through the ranks, eventually to the LCK. And this might be a very real possibility because Gryffinn is considered as a prodigy. According to Ellis, Gryffinn failed about 3 times in his tryouts before T1 realized he had a lot of potential. I'm not sure if this had a snowball effect, but T1 would also shortly acquire Reckless to join the T1 academy team as well. Polarizing content creator refers to Ellis's public perception. Ellis is a polarizing content creator and has been through a lot of controversies such as the moral of Liandry discussion or the Renekton controversy. These takes, who introduce a new concept or a viewpoint, have always sparked people to either agree with him or disagree. There is basically no in-between. Naturally, Ellis would gain a hate following where people criticize him for a lot of things, whether it be supposed incorrect opinions or personal attacks. People would also make up a version of Ellis that doesn't exist, which is something Ellis has attempted to combat throughout his career, essentially disproving or rebutting false claims about him. So if you click this video, it's very likely that you either love Ellis or you hate him, and if so, I'm not really sure why you're still watching this video. Anyways, with that being said, this ends Tier 1 and introduces you to another depth of LS, Tier 2. These are mainly concepts, memes or incidents that are maybe lesser known to a surface level fan. LS has actually had a history of coaching pro teams spontaneously and randomly, at least from the public eye. His connections in the esports scene is extensive and has caused him to coach pro players all around, seemingly at random times. Most of these coachings are not shown from his Leaguepedia, but for example in 2020 he would be very involved in helping Fnatic, and prior to joining C9 he would consult a lot with C9, advocating for Jack, the CEO of C9, to hire Veigar V2 and Max Waldo, which he eventually did.
As the first time I spoke to him personally, we actually had a really nice conversation about what I was trying to build, and he had several suggestions for me on players I should go, or coaches I should actually go look into who that he thought would be good for Cloud9. The 2 people on the top of that list were Veigar and Max, who I ended up hiring and we loved having as part of our team.
The Mother of God meme is a common phrase used by LS to exclaim,
Are you fucking serious? Holy shit, you're so fucking terrible! Mother of God! Wow!
The meme would eventually develop into other variations with the prefix mother of, such as mother of yes or mother of based. Between 2013 and 2014, Ellis was active in the Hearthstone scene for a bit. He actually was pretty high ranked on the solo queue ladder, and he was the best arena player for 4 months, and he had the highest recorded win rate at the time. And a little known fact is that he invented the Warlock class deck named Handlock, which is basically a control deck that uses life tap, the special hero power, to draw more cards than most other decks, and often aims to defeat the opponent in the late game with big minions such as Molten Giants. And this is a deck archetype still used today. Ellis also invented the Frost Giants mage deck and co-invented the Warrior deck with ECOB, which Artosis used to win the BlizzCon 2013 Hearthstone Innkeepers Invitational. Ellis was apparently also involved with Doghouse, which was a Hearthstone team established around October 2013. The team participated in the first 5 seasons of ESGN's Fight Night. Doghouse disbanded later in June 2014 after the core players were picked up by Cloud9. I'm not entirely sure to the extent that Ellis was involved with Doghouse though. Moreover, in a Korean Blizzard Hearthstone blog post, Artosis was interviewed and mentioned LS. Are there any Hearthstone players who you feel are powerful or great opponents? Is there any player you don't want to face as an opponent? LS, Last Shadow 9 comes to mind first. This is a player I often meet as a practice partner and he is very skilled. LS also participated in I Heart You, King of the Hill and Turn 2 podcast, but sadly those podcast episodes have been since deleted. LS Copypastas are Copypastas based on his initials LS, which is either by coincidence or an act of God a very fitting 2 letters, which allows for funny deciphering of what L and S stands for. You have things like Low Standards, Lil Snake, Luke Skywalker, you get the gist. I made a whole Reddit post about Ellis's copypastas, including all of them, or at least most of them, and it is pretty long. The copypasta will usually go like this.
It's LS, aka Low Standards. He's a commentator for the LCK and often ridiculed for his annoying personality and questionable game knowledge. He's specifically known for his Annie and Tom Thomas Kench True Trick Pony in low platinum solo queue.
Or you have other examples like LS, aka Losing Sales, is a shopkeeper whose goal is to sell Liandrys and prevent people from getting scammed by Boris, but always seem to fall short of his counterpart as his Black Cleaver and Morello purchases keeps on rising. LS, also known as Likes Suit Coats, is an LCK color caster and content creator known for constantly wearing suit coats, whether he fits in them or not. He also can be periodically spotted in Korean gold solo queue meaning Eloy, Yon, and Kog'Maw mid, though he doesn't typically find success. Sinner or sinning is an LS biblical term. It started off as a meme, but slowly it became a semi-serious term to describe any champion that must get ahead early and snowball, or be irrelevant. This also creates a high variance idea to it, which is something else is against, as according to his axiomatic considerations. Sinning is a verb that refers to anything that a champion does to achieve that snowball. Examples of sinners are Olaf, Lee Sin, or Renekton, and the examples of sinning are invading and doing risky ganks that should work but are not guaranteed to work. The complete opposite of a sinner is a saint, and according to the LS Bible, this means any champ that is guaranteed to be impactful. Impactful usually refers to scaling champions or enchanters, but should not be associated with bad early game champions. Jace and Gangplank are both saints with a solid early game, for example. So the application to League is that it basically refers to a champion that scales or a champ that can snowball but don't need to, like Gangplank or Evelynn. If a saint defeats a sinner, the sinner is said to be purified. Personally, I would also say that a sinner in League terms is used a bit loosely as well, such as some player doing a certain blunder or mistake like building grievous wounds items against champions when necessarily don't have any healing. If you didn't know this by now, LS has had a history of casting in the LCK, and with this, other memes have come to life within the LS community. We'll get to them later, which is like the broadcast terms and that Ornn is more than Ornn, which is in fact the next one, and that one just refers to a clip about how LS explains what Ornn is.
It's because Ornn, the Mage, Death Knight, Paladin, Hunter, Rogue, Warrior, Enchanter, Tank, Bruiser, Wizard, Warlock, Priest, Assassin, Gunslinger, Druid, Shaman, Necromancer, Ninja, Gunslinger, Bard, Monk, Robot, Conjurer, Blacksmith, Mystic, Warden, God, Illusionist, Templar, Wizard was able to take up so much damage and give Dragon X the opening that they needed.
The necessary context here is that Ornn on release was pretty overloaded. LS explained relatively recently why he didn't return to LCK casting, but didn't go into reasons as to why specifically.
Yeah, so some stuff with me that I obviously already talked about. I already talked about like the casting stuff because a lot of you guys, including Caedrel, like Caedrel reached out yesterday, were curious that like my most recent photo on Instagram was aimed at like returning to casting. However, LCK told me that they will not have me back on as a caster. I've tried to rejoin LCK 3 separate times now, and every single time, just something that I feel like does not make any sense comes up. So yeah, I will not be on LCK. Why am I not in LCK Global? I don't know. Someone has it out for me, quite literally. I mean, I've already talked about this on stream multiple times. I asked to go back several times, like several times, and I wasn't the only one that asked. There was other people that asked for me to be able to return. And I had standing invites, and I still do, right, to like EU and or LEC and LCS. So it's really weird. It's obviously not a problem with Riot or like my capability as a caster or as like an entertainer. But yeah, like even when they were having the COVID issues and like they were short-staffed and the casters cast 5 days in a row and like they complained about it on Twitter, I literally messaged them and said like, hey, I have the proper visa, I'm here, I can just show up, I don't need pay. And then they said that, I don't know, it was just really weird, man, I don't know.
It has been assumed that it's mainly because he's such a divisive figure and has been involved in dramas, and thus LCK doesn't really want to associate or take fire from that. Dark room is a thing you might notice when watching LS's old videos, and it's the fact that his room just tends to be dark. Especially in his early history of streaming League, his room would be extremely dark, but there's a purpose to this. Unfortunately, LS suffers from keratoconus, which is an eye condition in which your cornea, you know, the clear dome-shaped front of your eye, gets thinner and gradually bulges outward into a cone shape. A cone-shaped cornea causes blurred vision and may cause sensitivity to light and glare, hence why his room is dark. LS got a surgery regarding his eye in 2019, and since it seemingly has improved and the dark room meme slowly died. In December 2018, LS became the first foreigner to join a Korean team in an official capacity when he became BBQ Oliver's head coach. LS mentioned in an interview that BBQ reached out to him in the previous month in November, where a staff member from BBQ contacted him. him. He also mentioned that he had another Korean team who was interested in him, but he went with Barbecue because they were formerly LCK. However, his time in Barbecue would suffer from issues such as not getting proper support from the organization that we won't really go into this video. There is a conspiracy theory about the true identity of Batman is not Bruce Wayne, but in fact Nick the Cesare, or LS. I think the meme initially was just created by some fans who photoshopped Nick's face into Batman.
What the fuck is that Batman? Jesus Christ. All you, crony. All you, crony.
He has some bangers. What is going on?
LS has this dark aura or like a curse around him when he predicts a team will win. You see, when such a prediction is made, the team will actually lose. As such, LS will write on Twitter that, for example, it makes sense that TSM will win this game because their draft is insane, the Drake Soul is perfect and so on. But in the end, TSM will just somehow, by divine power, just lose. And then LS will post a reply or a quote tweet of the Batman meme which heavily implies that LS was behind it all due to abuse of his dark supernatural curse. LS's in-game nickname history has several meanings and references behind them, which I think is interesting to add to the Iceberg tier meme. In no particular order, here's what he has had before. Vol'jin is a character from World of Warcraft. Phyrexia is originally from Magic the Gathering, a game LS likes, and Phyrexia is an artificial plane of mechanical and biomechanical life, an ecosystem comprised of metal, death, and tissue, a hellish world with an accelerated evolution of artifact creatures. It's also known as the Machine Hell and the Nine Hells. Zookeeper refers to how your teammates are animals and you are their guardian, the Zookeeper. Toon Exodia is a reference to the card Exodia, the Forbidden Toon from Yu-Gi-Oh! Another card game Ellis has played. Bryce Walker, who is the main antagonist of the 2007 novel 13 Reasons Why and its 2017 Netflix adaptation. White Gengar is just a Pokemon. Anna Montgomery, who is one of the main characters in the miniseries What If. Shervin Mahmoud is the real-life name of Yosh. You know, the guy who had an impactful influence on LS. Bernie Sanders, I guess that one is obvious. XYZ or LSXYZ, which is just an alphabetical sequence that is catchy and LS likes. The name Twitch Prime, a reference to his love for getting Twitch Primes. Cookies and Milk is a likely reference that criticizes pro players' users of the cookies rune. Nasus Support is an invention by LS. Naturally, he has gotten criticism for it, and he has advocated that this is an extremely good pick in certain scenarios for pro play. This is mainly due to his outdated overpowered abilities like W, which is a literal point and click slow and gives attack speed reduction, and his E, which somewhat gives armor penetration. He would argue that this pick is extremely oppressive versus Kalista and other ADCs. Ellis mentioned that he picked this commonly when he did in-houses versus various LCK Academy teams. The Neace Drama is explained in depth in my critical video on Neace. Essentially, the history between Neace and Ellis was quite long, rooting back to 2014, when Neace got help from LS to stay in Korea to bootcamp. For various dishonest reasons, Neace would block LS. LS would eventually stop interacting with Neace because he saw through the leeching attempts of Neace. Fast forward some time in the future, Neace would get under scrutiny for being allegedly boosted. However, he would say this is all unfair because streamers like LS wouldn't get under scrutiny when he got boosted. This was another dishonest play by Neace because LS actually just do it with a friend. The summary I present is basically a very condensed version of the drama, but if you're interested, go watch the dishonest downfall of Neace video and check the chapters. The Renekton controversy, also known as the LS Caedrel drama, is a controversial take on the champion Renekton by LS. This mainly happened in March of 2021. Renekton has been a pro play staple pick for seasons on end, and as such, people just think it's a good pick because it's picked a lot of times. Initially, LS was critical of Renekton prior to this, but Caedrel would post a tweet thread saying, "Can you go into more details as to why Renekton is bad?" At LS, I think I speak for many pros across the world here in saying that this champion has been one of the strongest tops for over the last 2 years in pro play, suits almost every draft and has very little counterplay in fights. This champion, especially this year, has been really strong, as well as in season 9 and 10 across all the world. I feel like it does really well into most lane matchups, fits into every topside 3v3 to help in early fights around Herald/Drakes and nullifies carries in 5v5s. Caedrel also added that he has zero intention to start drama, but regardless, the public would perceive this as drama. When Caedrel was asked on stream about the post, he replied with this.
LS's takes are a bit controversial. No, I'm not belittling LS here or attacking him at all, but I feel like he makes so many controversial claims that 99% of them are wrong, but then one of them is right, and then he overhypes the fact that he's right. So for example, I don't know, the Moonstaff combo. Yes, I credit him for spotting that, great. But he said a lot of crazy other things that make no sense, like Proto Belt Nidalee, Kai'Sa's useless, Nara's a shit champ, Renekton's trash, Lee Sin was broken when FPX won Worlds, but Lee Sin's a trash champ, and even Tian was first rotating Lee Sin because of how broken it was. Like, I feel like a lot of the takes that he makes are just incorrect, but when one of them's right, it's kind of like overinflated to the point where it's like, look, I told you guys, yeah, he's a broken clock. Well, I wouldn't want to say he's a broken clock because I like LS. I think he's a nice guy. He's a great person. He's an awesome... I think LS is a really good entertainer. I think he's a really good entertainer. And I actually think that he makes really good content. The only problem that I have is a lot of his takes are just too controversial to make any sense. Okay, sometimes he's not a nice guy, obviously, because he sometimes belittles pros, sometimes like this, but everyone does that, so I won't say too much into it.
When LS was asked on stream, he stated, I think his tweet is ridiculous in a lot of ways. You can't respond in a tweet or in a clip. If you don't respond, you get flamed. It ends up spawning tons of Reddit threads. I think there are tons of problems with the assertions he made in it, which I think are really bad. There are a lot of things going on, and there's a question that doesn't have an easily identifiable or discernible answer. LS went on to talk about Renekton win rates in detail, and as well as how stats by themselves don't mean anything, how people perceive the numbers, and how Renekton can help a decent team beat a team who aren't as good, but that it's not a great pick in the long run. LS also explained this in more detail on a feature in LSC, which I think was on the same time as the drama developed.
First up, why do you hate Renekton in general? Let's start with that.
In general, I don't like champions that the onus is on them to get ahead. I think that there's other champions that are better if the argument is that you're going to be sort of like a defensive lineman or something for your team composition. Obviously, there are items that are propping him up a lot better, but I think generally, if you really look at the context surrounding a lot of his games, it's really bad. Now, on the topic of his stats are really bad in LEC. They're very high in other areas, but there's a very big deviation between the regions, so stats alone shouldn't be the crux of the argument for people wondering.
Hey, they should never be the crux of the argument for anything, right? So let's then look at the facts and look at this draft specifically, where of course I got picked into the Karma in the top lane. Talk to me about that specific lane matchup, but then also both the team compositions and how he fits in there.
The really weird thing to me is Renekton, he came in on R5, and if you look at the opponent's team composition, they're really close quarter combat. They're short range, very brawlery. You have a lot of shields. You have Xayah that can uplift herself, whatnot. There's Alistar, there's Hecarim. Ryze is really good in a mid-rangey type of team composition. On the flip side for Vitality, they already had defensive linemen inside of Rel and Udyr. They had Tristana and Victor, which is outranging everyone on the side of Schalke. So why did they go with Renekton, which rewards Schalke's team composition, but also loses to not only Ryze, but also Karma and lane? Doesn't make any sense to me.
What would be your counter suggestion, knowing that you have Karma as a lane matchup, but you also have things like the Gnar taken off the table, the Jace perhaps even in the Shen?
So the interesting thing is Karma, I think in her current state with all the buffs that she's been getting, just as well as the nature of the champion, she has two different ways to really itemize. She has different rune selections. It's really hard to beat Karma. I think only off the top of my head, Aurelia actually silences her in laning phase, and even that is sort of a skill matchup. Aurelia obviously favored inside of it, but Karma doesn't really have a lot of lane counters in a vacuum, so if you're looking for something like that, that's pretty much where you have to go. You could just handshake it with another enchanter up in top lane as well, but then you get people that are starting to roll their eyes at an enchanter meta up in top lane. It's a pretty rough situation, but any other generic tank would just be better than Renekton.
A year later, LS and Caedrel will be on good terms, as Caedrel will shout out LS saying that he has converted him.
It's the Lee Sin lax setup, right? When you think of Lee Sin, it's very good with things like Twisted Fate and Ryze, Leona, things that it can walk into. Even Renekton top, as much as I dislike the champion now, it has some kind of CC to allow the Lee Sin.
Hater.
Now I'm a Renekton hater. LS has converted me in 2022. I mean, the champion with the item nerfs and all the different changes coming.
Caedrel shouted me out? What did he say? Wait, what did he say? Oh, he said I converted him? I converted him to a Renekton hater. Excellent.
If you're Masters and above, it's very likely that you're using something called cheater recall when playing League of Legends. And this is another concept that is popularized by LS, and he would explain why it's called cheater recall in this clip.
The reason for the name cheater recall was because when I first was showing Korean players how to do it, why to do it, and like what goes into it, they would look at it confused, and they would try to come up with like we would play blitz games.
Can I get a prime check?
They would try to figure out ways to punish it, and they couldn't find out a way to punish it, so it was actually Sungju that first called it cheater, where he said you cheater. How, like in like broken English, he just said you cheater, and so that's actually how we started calling it cheater recalls.
Cheater recall is also today considered as a fundamental skill, and lacking that skill has a significant impact on your skill level. Gnomed is another classic meme in LS's early history of his league streaming career. Getting Gnomed isn't exclusive to LS, but it's something he would frequently fall for in the past.
Montages don't really mean anything. Like, anyone can look good. Ah, son of a bitch, I just got fucking gnomed. Ah, shit.
This meme since is dead, mainly as it was a trendy thing in the past. Woman is the nickname LS used for his grandmother. He has a pretty close relation with her and would feature her many times on the stream. Basically, Woman is tantamount to your astrology sign prediction readings. LS asks her for prediction on which team will win, her opinions on various things such as what elo hell is and whether it exists, and you would also have many wholesome moments on stream with Woman.
It's early in the morning.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, hello, woman. Took you 3 rings.
Who's this?
What do you mean? What?
Who's this?
Wait, what do you mean? Who's this?
Who is this?
What? Nana?
Yeah?
What do you mean? It's Nikki. What?
Oh.
What? Nana, where's David?
Who?
David.
Nick, I'm just...
Oh my fucking god.
I don't know.
I'm gonna fucking get you back one day. I swear to you, you don't even know. Oh no, you're getting
No,
you're getting getting it back one day.
Sweetheart.
Oh, you just wait. You wait for the unsuspecting. Oh no. You know what? You're gonna be good for something. Who's gonna win this upcoming match? Brazil or Japan?
Yeah, Japan.
Yeah, thanks for the curse. Talk to you later. I'll call you back soon.
All right,
bye, Nana. I love you.
In 2020, there would be a leak about LS potentially joining T1. T1 fans were not pleased with the news due to various reasons like racism or holding the 12-year-old LS in contempt for his StarCraft cheating scandal. As such, a barrage of personal attacks would be directed to LS, and his grandmother or woman would be doxxed and also get harassed. This overblown, unnecessary reception caused LS to deactivate his Twitter. LS's personality is accompanied with altruism, the concern for the well-being of others. When people bootcamp on the Korean server, LS tends to be the go-to guide for getting information that helps one out with the bootcamp, such as where to stay in Korea, the best places to get food, areas to visit, and he would even let people into his apartment to have a place to stay, effectively making LS a Korean safari guide. The TF Blade incident refers to the 2023 bootcamp where 6 streamers such as Dantes and Yamato got banned in just 3 days due to TF Blade. I have a whole video explaining the context around this event. LS was involved with this in 2 instances. The first instance is when LS and TF Blade met each other in solo queue, and TF Blade would criticize LS for being low elo and a bad player due to an in-game mistake that exacerbated the situation. Personalities would review this, such as Midbeast, Nemesis, and Caedrel, and they would argue that LS was in fact right and TF Blade was inting. Post-game, TF Blade would lash out to LS, and LS would eventually react to this, putting TF Blade back to his place.
Is my MMR this slow that I'm playing with a reject like fucking LS? How the fuck am I playing with this diamond fucking freak? Look at this fucking reject. He never picks anything. Duo queues to masters every year. Why the fuck do I play with all these?
How can anyone support you? You're a goblin! No one likes you, which is why every time your bootcamp run ends, your viewership goes to nothing! You literally have no friends in the entire scene! Your entire friendship circle is the same circle for the last 6 years! It's people who know you IRL! It's people who were friends with you before you even blew up! You get body slammed by amateur players in North America! I play in scrims versus LCK players! We are not the same! You can go and have your solo queue adventures, and you're an excellent solo queue player. I think that you're a great solo queue player, absolutely. We are not the same. You lose lane to amateurs in NA.
The second involvement LS has is that after the streamers were banned, there was a narrative that LS was behind the bans for some reason. However, this made no sense as LS was even attempting to get these players unbanned and was on good terms with most of these streamers. He was in fact the go-to guy when talking to Riot between these streamers, because most of these streamers weren't a part of the Riot League partner program, which means that they basically don't have Riot contact to talk with. So they were talking with LS in order to talk with Riot.
Quest, who told me no, the accounts will not be unbanned. So while while I'm doing all of this, then I'm going through, I'm like on, I'm in like Twitter DMs with several of the boot campers, and I'm trying to help them unlock their accounts and connect a phone number to their accounts. And so this is happening last night at like 5 a.m. I'm up until 5 a.m. dealing with all of this. Now, while this is going on, there was already a conspiracy theory type thing started on the very first day that this happened, because Yamato's death ended up trying to say that I was behind it. Now, he says this on day one. He ends up saying that I'm not behind it today, but on day one, that's where it starts. Where he tries to claim that I'm behind it. Which is really disgusting, because every single time that Yamato has been inside of Korea, he's literally DM'd me for help, and literally the very last time that he was in Korea, I helped him get an account. It's the craziest fucking thing in the world. I don't know. I don't know. Dante's also implied it, yes, but he was trying to get to the bottom of it, and he thought because of a fucking guy in chat, he was getting baited by a guy in chat. There was a Korean in chat that was just making things up, and then Polypuff came in and corrected it. So then there was this conspiracy theory thing going on for like an hour today, where everyone just thought that I'm like this absolute 10-head mastermind, and that I'm behind all the fucking bans, and I'm actually...
The tier 3 of LS Iceberg revolves around more lesser known incidents and facts, while some topics are more dark and sad in nature. The broadcast terms refers to when Ellis was a caster in the LCK. During his time as a caster, he would use a lot of terms, which would culminate in a Leaguepedia list. Some of these terms are Cheater Recall, Clown Drake, meaning Cloud Drake, and the Cloud Dragon Soul being coined as Pennywise from the horror novel It. Greatly Reluctant Fighters, meaning the esports team GRF, it basically stems from the team being reluctant to pull the trigger on team fights. The name made its Reddit fame through this specific clip.
We are about to go into game number 3 for all the marbles. We are about to put it all on the line here to kick off the first series between Don't Wanna Go versus Greatly Reluctant Fighters. That's right.
Negan, which originates from the uncanny resemblance between Graves' splash art and this specific image of Negan from the show The Walking Dead. The nickname also includes a lifesteal only build on Graves as a reference to the apparent bloodthirsty nature of the character. Sinner, as we have gone through, Vanilla Ice Cream means whenever the game enters a lull state, which is another term, and it refers to a period of the game in which teams aren't doing anything notable. As for Vanilla Ice Cream, Ellis and his fellow casters will start discussing Vanilla Ice Cream in the belief that it will magically cause action to happen.
It's usually at this point in the time, you know, you take a look.
You started talking about this, and they moved to the Baron.
Exactly. Now, listen, don't interrupt it. So
Yeah,
let's get
sorry.
some action here. So I just want to let you know that Vanilla Ice Cream is really cool.
Okay.
Okay.
I like that. I like the Baron going down too.
All right.
There
I
you
told
go! Vanilla Ice Cream engaged from Doran, but it's not playing at all as he gets in there, and Keria is able to get in the back line.
Breaking an entry refers to a dark period in Ellis' life when he broke into his mom's apartment. In the early 2010s, Ellis got an opportunity to return to StarCraft after not being in the scene for some time. However, to do so, he would play at fast food restaurants to get internet access such as Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. It slowly grew to become a problem and eventually got so bad that Ellis started to break into his mother's house to use her internet after she went to work. She caught him eventually and threatened to call the police. This is just one of the dark stories regarding Ellis' adolescence, and we'll explore more bits later. In 2022, Losing at Slots, or LS, would get under another drama involving gambling. This was a sponsorship deal with esports bets, which also had a section where you could bet on someone's individual games. The reception to this was pretty negative to say the least, especially due to a win trading pandemic at the time. A Reddit thread was made which went pretty viral within the community. Here's a short recap from RiceCube who made a news report on it, which also gave us some more interesting insights.
LS had a Reddit hate thread made about him, and this thread set off a massive chain reaction in the League community. Popular Lulu One Trick Do Anal made a tweet calling him out, saying, "One of the biggest League streamers not only endorses esports gambling but also betting on the games of his colleagues." And then people will wonder why high ELO win trading is such a prevalent issue nowadays.
Eventually, the sponsor would remedy the situation by removing the solo queue betting. In January of 2023, LS would come out with a video named Finding Out I'm Autistic. There were a lot of indicators that he was autistic prior to this revelation, but after consulting with a lot of psychiatrists and doctors, he would eventually reach one which concluded that he might have autism, which turned out to be the case. The final diagnosis would be autism spectrum disorder with severe ADHD and anxiety paired up with PTSD, probably from his adolescence. And the thing about this video is that some people would meme it. I mean, obviously there is some comedic value to the thumbnail and title. In late 2020, LS would report that he had a litmus test with Faker to join as a strategic coach. The conversation would last for about 3 hours, and just hearing from what occurred in that conversation was very insightful and a good look into both LS and Faker as personalities.
No, but people don't realize how long the talks were with Faker, guys. They were hours long. And then the call ended, John Kim called Faker, John Kim asked for Faker's input, and then Faker said, hire him. I met Joe Marsh and John on my birthday, and I was telling them that I would like help them because I was supposed to join as a streamer. While I was telling them about streaming, I was talking about the game, and like, you know, they told me what was going on with coaching staff, and I said, I can help you maybe find a coach. And then Joe said, what if you coach? And I said, well, I don't speak Korean. And then he said, well, we can get a translator. So we talked for like an hour, and they're like, okay, we're gonna, you know, Faker's gonna have to decide if you can join or not. So the next day, they immediately set up a call. Faker was actually home, and they set up a Discord call, and it was a multi-hour long VOD review over laning phases, drafts, map movements, and several different series. And I had to talk to Faker on like everything.
He was very poker face in a lot of ways until he like, you know, loosened up and whatever in the conversations. I thought that was really good. So yeah, it means a lot to get approval from someone like that who has every reason in the world to just want to reject me. And I think that's impressive. The most notable moments
fly on the wall during that
were probably when he told me something wouldn't happen, and then I went step by step to explain why it would, and then he would pause and then agree.
Really?
Those moments happened a lot. And it was mostly had to do with laning phase stuff. Like I was really adamant that Kana made a mistake on a rotation or like a wave crash, and I could mathematically like explain. I wouldn't say it was like we didn't have like disagreements. We one of the things that did end up happening is I thought that like one draft was just much more favored, and then he thought the other draft could win. But then I gave him the hypothetical of if it's the two best teams in the world and this team plays with this intention of like forcing this game state and only playing towards this game state, are they not more likely to win? And it was like that kind of a question. But I wouldn't say it's a disagreement. But I talked about one of the most impressive things was his refusal to allow cold reading. I don't know if that was captured, but...
And can you just to reiterate?
Yeah, just to reiterate, cold reading. So cold reading, this happen. It's very common in the scene by most analysts and coaches, where they will get into a conversation with the player and they will play off what the player is saying. They'll ask the player what they think they went wrong. And then depending on what the player says, the coach or analyst or person will then try to like respond to it with language that can like just play around it and navigate the conversation that way. And one of the most impressive things with Faker is he was the first player that I ever met that seemed very cognizant of that being a real thing and refusing to let it happen. So he would never let me ask him his thoughts or his questions. He would always demand that I do it first. Then he would let me know his thoughts. And that was really fascinating because it seemed like he was conscious of doing it, with how adamant he was about like always making it a point that he would not speak first on various topics. He seemed very equipped to do like litmus tests.
It was the hardest litmus test I've ever seen in esports, like across any team.
So LS is technically Faker certified as a coach, which makes it hard for extreme critics to say that he's a bad coach. MTG Colors referred to LS's drafting philosophy and basically how he sees drafts. LS's experience with card games is something that he has transferred effectively to League. He essentially splits champions into different colors, where each color has an archetype. A spreadsheet would be made to explain these colors more in depth, and as well as associate each champion with the color so that people can see what champion identifies with this system. It's not 100% up to date these days, but let's go through some examples. Aatrox is identified as a red and black champion. Red means that he relies on aggressive plays to gain resources early to force early wins. Red runs out of fuel fast, and they are often extremely weak if behind, or even as they need to keep accelerating. Black means power at a cost or a quest. A champion basically has a demand or a request or a condition that needs to be met. Azir is a blue and a colorless champion. Blue means he's all about knowledge, control, manipulation, and deception, denial, superior resource management, evasion, terraforming, reshaping terrain, things to your advantage. While colorless means that one has dedicated themes, strong inside a theme, or if a draft wraps around them. A link to this spreadsheet is in the description at your convenience. The G2 scandal was when LS worked with G2, a team then led by Carlos Ocelot Rodriguez. Ocelot had approached him initially in mid-July of 2014, and on July 29th, LS began to coach the team, first in preparation for their match against H2K and against Unicorns of Love. G2 beat H2K due to a forfeit, but then lost to Unicorns of Love. Over the next several weeks, LS tried to get Ocelot or G2 to pay him, but was unable to secure a payment. In a conversation broadcasted on LS's Twitch stream, Ocelot claimed that he was never going to pay LS. On November 3rd, LS offered to give his records of G2's communications and scrim information to any team playing against them, citing several reasons for his decision to do so. The next day, Sky Williams paid LS the amount owed him by Ocelot. The usage of biblical terms have naturally caused LS orbiters or people with the same school of thought to be branded as the Church of LS. Critics and haters alike have dubbed this as a cult, although it's just a meme designation. If you have agreed with LS's takes or were a fan of him, you would be a church member. However, a prominent church member would also be Nemesis, Vega V2 and Max Waldo. Some lesser known church members are arguably Sawyer, Autism, Malice and Crucile. These are also coaches that are personally endorsed by LS, which means that he believes their coaching is correct, reliable or accurate. In early 2022, a Portuguese member of parliament would criticize LS's coaching history after LS's contract with C9 was terminated. André Pinotes Batista, for one reason or another, would make a passive-aggressive attack against LS, saying that he's on duty as a coach is on average 77 days by calculating most of LS's Leaguepedia history, saying that he lasted 24 hours above average. This post was very dishonest as it lacked a lot of LS's unofficial work history in the scene, such as his time with Fnatic. Moreover, the Portuguese member of parliament also included outliers in his calculations, which was unfair, whereas some of these outliers were teams that just disbanded, which were completely out of LS's control. The post got quite some traction, and LS had to prove his credentials to an armchair analyst who thinks he knows LS's career better than him. LS was naturally perplexed at how he came to this conclusion and responded to him on stream.
So let's talk about something. Let's talk about why this guy's tweets are really dumb. You notice that it says 50 plus 30, okay? I was never officially hired by Gamers 2. I was freelance. And his 11 jobs as a coach analyst. If we're gonna include every freelance thing I have, this list is massive. I was never officially on Gamers 2. This was literally a thing. Okay, so we can remove the Gamers 2 thing. The Gamers 2 thing, I was never literally hired. So we have 50 right now. Super Hot Crew is the same exact team. So we actually have 6 months and 27 days. So actually, it's 207. Then you find out that Meet Your Makers is actually Super Hot Crew. So it's the same team, but they rebranded, and the way that Leaguepedia works is it says that it's a different team. Okay, so then we add 28 days to this. Okay, now we're at 235. Yes, I left Meet Your Makers. Okay, then I go to Roar for 20 days. The team disbanded. The team was a third-tier team. It wasn't even in Challenger Series, okay? Because NA used to have qualification. You guys know how LCS used to work. What ends up happening here is the team doesn't qualify. I joined the team for like a week. It's not even actually 20 days. I don't even know why it says 20 days. I wasn't even in the team for 20 days. I was in the team for like 10 days or something. And the team wasn't an official team, and then it disbanded. It didn't even... Nothing else even happened. It disbanded. What the fuck do you want me to do? After this, it says Gravity, 3 months and 14 days. Okay, so this one is true. So let's say 104. Then Tempo Storm, 6 months and 7 days. What it doesn't say is that Tempo Storm disbanded. And then I transitioned to a streamer for Tempo Storm for 3 years. Tempo Storm disbanded. What do you want me to do? So, okay, it says 6 months and 7 days. Okay, so 187. Okay, disband. Then I joined CLG as a streamer for 2 years, 24 days. Then I joined BBQ. I don't know why this says December. I was on BBQ from November until June. So actually, this should be longer. I don't know why this is actually wrong. I'm on BBQ from November till June. So that should have been 6 months. But let's go here, right? Let's say 173 days. I didn't comment on the BBQ stuff, but then everything that happened with BBQ came out via Malice. This was also not a team. I was not hired. We did not play in a tournament. It's not a paid position. What the fuck is this? This isn't even a thing. We're not even gonna add this. But it's probably on this guy's list, right? Of course it is. Then what? What is 173? Okay, 170, what? What is 173? 187? 1? What the hell is 1? What the hell is 1? I wasn't a coach! What the hell is this? I showed up And I wasn't even allowed to draft for the team because I wasn't officially even listed as a coach. It was a group of Korean players that I was just coaching individually, the same way that I do freelance. And then Cloud9, 2 months, 18 days. But again, I was doing stuff for C9 in November. October, I was doing stuff for C9. I just didn't physically sign the contract until December 2nd. This is the only real stuff here. Okay, so let's add up. Let's actually add up what happens here. Okay, divided by what? 6. 132. Now, obviously, this is slammed by Roar and the fact that most of these things were challengers and there's 2 disbands. Yeah, it averages out to a little bit more than 1 split, but when you factor in that there's disbands, that's like where it happens, when you factor in the disbands. But there's so many people that have like 1 split stints. Because if I include my time with organizations, you would add the 3 years here and you would add the 1 year, 7 day with T1. But the T1 thing is actually longer than November. It's actually September. It should have been September 2020. But like, this is just what I mean. It's so bad, man. This is actually insane. And it has 14K likes. I don't even understand it, man. It's so weird.
Much like how the touch of Nurgle spreads the gifts of disease, decay and destruction from the grandfather, the touch of LS refers to how spending time with LS is likely to change your opinions on the game and apply LS's philosophy to League of Legends. For example, Don Jake, who spent time with LS interviewing him, would say as such. Caedrel would change his opinion on the Renekton debate after discussing it with LS. It goes to show how rigorous, insightful and accurate LS's philosophy on the game is. It's very hard to argue against some of his axioms, where for example the primary driving axiom states, if you can propose, demonstrate or theorize something that is even 0.5% better than the other something, then that is all that matters in theory. Obviously there are more axioms at play here which reinforces it, such as its variable change and critical thinking. I also just want to point out that these axioms are just something I have dubbed and analyzed after watching LS for quite some time. It's nothing clearly defined in a book or in an internet post or something like that. It's just some standards LS has always kept to himself when analyzing the game. The T1 Chief Operating Officer refers to John Kim, who has been a very impactful person on LS mainly due to his emotional support and friendship. Kim was appointed the Chief Operating Officer at T1 in October 2019, and since then he focused on building the organization's business operations side in step with the legacy of its title-winning players. You know, Faker and such. He helped T1 expand beyond its home country of South Korea to grow into a global esports brand. Sadly, John Kim recently died due to health issues in 2021, which sadly also had an impact on LS. Permanently COVID refers to LS using a mask seemingly all the time. He has said it's merely a decorative thing to wear, but some community members meme on that fact. It's also a societal cultural thing in Asian countries to wear a mask even though there are no pandemics present. For example, Japanese people wear masks when feeling sick as a courtesy to stop any sneezes from landing on other people. Japanese women mask their faces on days when they don't have time to put on makeup. If you go to the League of Legends shop and write last space shadow, you will see the items Liandry Torment and Morellonomicon. These are obvious references to the Liandry Salesman meme, and League of Legends memorialized LS's work in the League shop. If you have watched LS since 2019, you probably know that he was heavily involved with Nemesis. This was also around the time he became good friends with Nemesis after Nemesis popped up in LS's chat. They would have a lot of moments together, create content, discuss topics, and do podcasts. However, fast forward to 2023, these two are on bad terms. The only public knowledge we know about that is LS made some comments about it. LS said that Nemesis and him had an argument when LS was joining C9 as a head coach, and he wanted Nemesis as his mid laner, mainly just due to how good of a player Nemesis is. I mean, he could easily contend with the top 4 mid laners in LCK. However, an argument would erupt between them, and essentially Nemesis didn't join C9, which is where LS got really upset towards him. Moreover, LS has said on other occasions that he doesn't have any issues with Nemesis as he thought everything was fine, but it seemed like they weren't on good terms. For example, the Drutu tournament would have LS and Nemesis on together as a team, but after the event, LS was still left with the impression that they weren't on good terms. The drama can be inferred to be petty because through time and time again, LS has shown that he's capable of moving past petty drama. One example of such a case is when he was involved in a drama with Professor Akali, but a few weeks ago from making this video, they are now on good terms after meeting up for a dinner. We've touched upon the T1 drama in the women's section. This drama was in December 2020. As we have established, Ellis is a divisive personality within League of Legends due to his controversial beliefs regarding League. On September the 8th, 2020, T1 was one of the 2 Korean organizations who approached Ellis according to Invent Global. Ellis commented to the news reporter Quest that he didn't confirm or deny anything and that he is intending to meet with T1 CEO Joe Marsh. On November the 2nd, Ellis and Polt were rumored to be joining T1 based on leaked conversations from T1 Efforts stream. This immediately became a trendy and hot topic of discussion in the League of Legends community, both on the Korean and the Western side of things. The reason why this became a topic of interest is because Ellis is of course a controversial figure. However, a lot of hate, personal attacks and even doxing would occur, especially from the Korean community. Ellis ended up taking a break from the socials, stating that I might end up going off Twitter too for a while as well as on stream. The amount of personal stuff in my life being dug up, flamed, etc. incorrectly too is insane, based entirely on speculation, which even if it were true has no basis to be brought up. I turned off DMs and Discord DMs. I might privatize my Twitter as well. I'm pretty depressed over so much at the moment. Being personally harassed for things beyond my control or misunderstandings or just factually untrue things is too much at the moment for me to handle while trying to juggle life. His grandmother would end up also getting harassed and doxed, which also contributed to Ellis temporarily deactivating his Twitter. 3 days later, T1 fans would release a statement condemning the organization's recent actions, which would state the following in a rough translation. SKT T1 fans are not satisfied with the team management of T1 and publicly denounced for 5 reasons. Point 1 is about how T1 did not contribute to players to focus and practice for games as they had a media day. The second point is that T1 fans are not satisfied with the new coaches and they think that Polt and LS are not qualified to be T1 coaches. Their first subpoint is that even though Polt is able to communicate in English and has a successful pro life in StarCraft 2, he does not know the League of Legends. He unqualifies as a professional League of Legends coach due to a lack of experience. LS also has a few experiences in Barbecue Olivers and broadcasting in LCK Global. He has no experience in coaching the LCK quality teams. 3. Fans are not satisfied because T1 should set the goal for LoL World Championship 2021 and they're not qualified to achieve the goals for fans and players. 4. Fans do not want to see T1 making the same mistake in 2021 and they want to have coaches who are qualified and able to reach the goal. 3. Ellis has a problem with an ex-T1 player Untara. Fans want to have a proper apology to Untara, not a non-apology to avoid incident. Point 4 and 5 references how T1 should have a better rapid response against malicious comments about T1 players and that the T1 BMW sponsor car was parked in the handicapped zone. So the main issue that T1 fans had was how Ellis defended Malice in a massive drama regarding Barbecue Olivers. To summarize, this is a super condensed version. Malice was suspended by Barbecue Olivers ahead of the Challengers Korea 2019 spring seasons and by Riot Korea prior to the start of the summer season for toxicity in solo queue. Ellis defended Malice by pointing out Korean racism against Westerners by saying the high mind of certain Korean fans and players endlessly harassing Malice showcased the gross hypocrisy in the whole situation. Not only was he never found to be racist, the behavior they're displaying is infinitely worse than anything he ever did. Moreover, Ellis also criticized Untara, a top laner from LCK, about releasing a video of Malice's troll moments. He argued that if it was a Korean player, this video would never be released and just helped spread hate and exacerbated the issue. Ellis thought that Malice's behavior was bad, but it wasn't worthy of a video. The result was that Korean fans went nuclear mode on him as well. Malice and Ellis would apologize later publicly, where Ellis directed an apology to Untara. In a future video, Ellis also stated he was unaware of Malice's racist remarks, which he felt really bad for as he thought it's something he shouldn't have defended.
At the time of me making a remark that stated that he was never found to have been racist, I had not seen the image that had circulated that he made a racist remark, and for that I am really sorry. I had not seen it. It's really indefensible. I can't say anything else really on that matter, but obviously nothing he's done has ever really been acceptable. And I've always held that stance towards him.
There is way more to the Barbecue Olivers incident, but essentially Ellis didn't do anything bad except defending Malice too hard. He merely pointed out that the toxicity goes both ways, from LCK Bros and Malice. Because of the Barbecue incident, Koreans would cite his defense of Malice being an issue. On November 7th, T1 fans rented a truck with critical messages and had it driven past T1's headquarters in protest of the issues raised in their earlier statement. T1 would post a statement saying that they're working hard to put the team in a position to win Worlds. Bwipo came out defending LS in light of his family being subjected to threats and doxing. T1 later announced that Daini, Sefa and Polt would join the team, but LS was not mentioned. On November 14th, Discord screenshots surfaced showing T1 management prevented moderators of the T1 Discord group from removing hate speech directed towards LS. Several moderators of the T1 Discord resigned in protest. T1's Discord was closed as their response and apologized, and their Twitter was also deactivated. The Twitter account got reactivated one day later. On November 24th, LS was announced to join T1 as a streamer and went through that decision making in more detail in a video. The next tier is the darkest story surrounding LS, revolving mainly of sad, tragic tales and as well as information that is almost not known to the fanbase of LS. On tier 4 we start with LS's various conspiracy theories. On the StarCraft forum website TL.net, LS engaged in a post discussing the end of the Earth. LS would type about the theories on Earth's death, saying in 2007 the rise of a monopoly, the George Bush family, 2008 the rise of the dictator, Satan, the 7-year plan as sought from the Bible, and somewhere in between here the next Pope arrives, and in 2012 a meteor of a size of Texas is pinpointed at the middle of Atlantic. In 2026, a meteor at the size of Asia is pinpointed towards the Gulf of Mexico. In 2037, we have Nostradamus. God, do not listen to what you hear people say, for only I know the true time of your demise. Biblical code. 6 out of 7 signs have been completed. The 7th trumpet is awaiting its call. When it does, the final battle will begin. LS would double down on another comment saying that there has been a movie about the meteor and the Mayans have drawings or scripts that state December 21st is the last day. Obviously this is all just some conspiracy theory in a fun little discussion post about the end of the Earth, and well, LS was 14 when he posted about this, but I thought it was pretty funny to include. LS has had a history of having open DMs mainly to just interact with the public, or if someone wonders anything you can DM him. However, in 2018 Ap0calypse, known as the most racist player in League's history, sent a message to LS. LS would go on Twitter talking about this where he said, "I'm being put in an absolutely terrible situation while streaming. The US player Ap0calypse is messaging me some seriously concerning mental illness things and essentially telling me to coach him or he'll take Minecraft foul damage but in real life. Just now I've been sent a photo of actual damage to his own Minecraft character. I've reached out to mutuals of his to try to find out who he actually is, as I'm unable to phone Felice or anyone, but this is absolutely terrible being told if I don't call or coach him that he'll self-damage himself. I please urge anyone who actually knows him IRL to contact him ASAP. For those wondering, the photo has a special message inside of it that isn't photoshopped, so that he assures me it's real. It's not a random photo from the internet." The community replied that this is just the usual Ap0calypse with his L9 shenanigans. Grossgore also replied saying, "Bro, this same kid will legit inted me today for attention and is now self-damaging himself. He should turn off his PC and get real counsel if he wants help. Not your problem, LS. He was fine being a racist, inting homophobic in my game early. I'm sure he's fine now." LS replied with, "It's my problem because I can't flip a coin on the what if he isn't trolling, knowing that maybe I could have used my reach to prevent it or done something to stop it. I actually can't ignore this. This is terrible." Disintrest, the C9 arc, and the downfall of the LS church kind of goes hand in hand. In summary, supposed church members or coaches that have the same school of thought, like LS, would join C9. Those were Veigar V2 and Max Waldo. After some time, LS would join C9 as a head coach. He saw this as an opportunity to demonstrate change and shake up the meta in the LCS. LS aimed to totally restructure C9, bringing him with 3 talents from Korea, T1 Academy ADC Berserker, Rookie Support Winsome, and the LCK top laner Summit. With them arriving, it would result in Fudge swapping to mid lane from top lane. LS's tenure would see the players trying out unorthodox picks and strategies like Ivan and Soranka in the mid lane. The team posted a convincing 3-1 start in the first 2 weeks of LCS, but just before C9 took the stage for their 5th game, the organization announced on Twitter that LS had been released and Max Waldo has been promoted to head coach. There was a lot of reactions to this, and people were mainly angry with this decision. From what we publicly know, the best explanation of this event is that C9 had a rigorous set infrastructure in how a coach should operate. LS didn't conform to this rigorous structure and shake things up, exactly the reason why C9 hired him, but this shaking up also led to C9 deciding to terminate him. After this, Max Waldo would find success in the LCS, winning it with C9. However, Max Waldo became increasingly disinterested in being a coach and decided to eventually quit altogether. He nowadays manages YouTube channels for a living. LS would never go on to join a team again, and he would vocally say that he didn't want to join any teams either. Although LS has mentioned this several times, in a future podcast with Don Jake, he would go more in depth into the reasons on why he got disinterested disinterested and his career seemingly being a failure. Again, there's way too much to break it down in this video, but essentially some of the issues were how non-experts hire experts, management in esport teams are ineffective, and pro players nowadays are complacent. You have modern generation players are doing more of the new things in the game than the older players. This is because when you're climbing up the ranks, the hunger will lead you to alternative options, whereas complacency teaches you to knock people down, which reinforces your job security. This means that there is a kind of threat when new ideas are introduced. One such example is when Febiven mocked the idea of variable change and that you should essentially play with feeling, which is just extremely wrong.
How do you feel about everyone going your build? I know I talked to you about the Ludens Azir.
I mean, it's just one of those things, right? Like, builds in League of Legends are just really hard to, like, you can always question them, but how much do they actually, like, make a difference, right? When you build a certain item, and you're like, are you calculating your damage and shit, or like, it's just really hard to tell, right? Unless you actually check the damage numbers. Like,
yeah, sure.
You'll be like a fucking nerd, you know? But,
yeah, dude, like, imagine doing that. What a fucking loser.
Like no pro does this, honestly. Like,
holy shit, just don't tell LS, man. He's gonna lose his mind if he hears this.
This is what you do in school, and everyone hates school. So like, why would you solve some math problems or something, you know? It's like, just do whatever you want. You're already a pro anyways, like.
You're already a pro anyways. Who can do? Oh my god, LS is gonna love this shit. I respect this so much, man. What the
I really think sometimes when he talks about this Morello stuff, he's actually delusional though. Like, I agree sometimes, but he makes it seem like this item is completely useless, but it's actually not.
My problem is, like, I don't know if you, like, LPL, they literally just build it every game for no reason. No healing on the enemy team. Enemy team is all a bunch of high HP targets. It's like perfectly Andre's game. And no one builds it in that region. I just don't get it.
So yeah, this is basically a guy paid 5 to 6 figures a year and basically says, it's like school, so why would I build correctly? Also note that the nerd part is obviously a joke, but what we should focus on is the fact that playing with feeling is better than numbers. The standard for pro players to not lose to shopkeepers are sadly too high nowadays. This, among other things, has caused LS to lose passion within the league scene. This little section of the video also somewhat encapsulates how the popular term Church of LS is on its downfall and also explains the mystery behind the C9 arc. Since LS is a personality very open about himself to the audience, we get to know a little bit more of some of his shortcomings as a human being. LS has previously talked with a psychiatrist from Healthy Gamer GG, namely Dr. K. In this discussion, Dr. K would showcase that LS tends to rationalize a lot of things that are just bad or wrong. This is also not anything 100% true, so take everything with a grain of salt, and we're not going to sit in this video cosplaying armchair psychologists. Anyways, Dr. K would also ascertain that LS is a person who relies on a lot of logic and evidence and uses those things to seek or ascertain truth. In a very simplistic example, if someone punches me, I would hold that person in contempt and be angry at him and even defend myself from further harm. However, in Alice's case, he would rather rationalize why such a person did that, effectively giving him an excuse and that it's Alice's fault. This is a type of defense mechanism in which a person justifies difficult or unacceptable feelings with the seemingly logical reasons and explanations. Other cases of rationalization is if after a divorce, a man may convince himself that his ex-wife wasn't up to his standards, or that the split is a blessing in disguise so he can travel more rather than accepting the truth for what it is and deal with the difficult emotions such as unworthiness or feeling unloved. Their discussion would find that this supposed defense mechanism comes from his adolescence, which was incredibly tough for LS. When LS was 12 years old during his StarCraft Brood War career, he was caught in at least 2 instances of cheating, once by rigging maps and once by colluding with another player named Kawhi Rice on Venturolo, which is basically a VoIP software. However, he would eventually earn forgiveness from the StarCraft community and was unbanned after 4 years on the TL.net website. LS has talked about his cheating and why he did it, but it also actually positively impacted him because he gained an interest in analysis. And if this makes sense, the reason he cheated is because he felt isolated and wanted to make friends and be recognized. The way to do that for the 12-year-old was to beat these players to befriend them and then play normally to become better. The Incheon incident refers to a dark period in Alice's lifetime in 2021 summer due to stress. This incident made him mentally spiral down. He also lost a few close people to him during this time period as well, such as John Kim, which exacerbated the issue. Alice's inability to be present would also apparently affect other relationships such as with Nemesis. He talked a little bit recently about this on the Don Jake podcast. As we have heard by this point, Ellis's early adolescence has been a strife for him. At one point, Ellis was actually homeless. At 18 years old, he moved to Korea against all odds and would land with only $200. The next 1 to 2 years would be a nightmare for Ellis as his financial situation was really bad. He would deal with depression, being broke and isolated in Korea. Eventually, he would also become homeless. He did, however, risk it all on a gamble, namely poker, with all the money he had left. If he lost there, he had absolutely nothing. To the benefit of Ellis, this gamble would pay off and allow him to afford a small room in South Korea, and the amount of money he had, he would need to be stretched on food. He would lose a lot of weight during this time, and thankfully he got an opportunity by the coach from the Korean team MVP to stay with him. However, there was a debacle here because Ellis was gay, and as such the MVP folks had some reluctance in getting him in, but after some discussion they agreed and catered to him. Ellis also later got featured by the content creator Day9 TV, which garnered him other opportunities within the StarCraft community. During Ellis's StarCraft years in Korea, Ellis would have issues with his lungs. He thought he had tuberculosis after encountering some doctors, but they couldn't effectively discern it. Since he was gay, Korean doctors also had the stereotype that he might have AIDS, so he was also tested for that. But at some point, a New York doctor made the diagnosis that he had bronchopulmonary aspergillosis, ABPA for short, which is essentially a fungal infection of the lungs. His health would rapidly improve from treatment. Ellis, also known as Large Slam, is an ex-coach for the organization Cloud9. Ellis was released for suplexing Winsome into a table while yelling "It's slamming time." The table slammer incident was from Ellis's C9 arc. Initially, Sven, an academy player at the time, went on to the Summoning Insights podcast and talked about how Ellis slammed tables.
Things that just really pissed him off, like if Winsome would buy 2 pink wards on Sona instead of buying 1 or 0, he would just get mad. And then he kept doing it, and one day he was fucking slam table and say, "Look, you have fucking Moonstone at minute." It's the first game of the split last year. Cena has 3 dragons at 20 minutes, and Soul's coming up, and he doesn't have Moonstone 1 minute before Soul spawns.
Perfect.
And then meanwhile, he buys 2 pink. He buys 2 pinks per base, right? Puts it in a spot where it gets killed in 1 minute, and then Ellis is like, "Look, the fucking pink board. It's fucking useless, right?" So that's the kind of things that other coaches will never look at. So that was interesting to work with, and I really like that he pointed out individual things a lot, like freezing us.
Ellis would provide context to this, which showed a moment of frustration in his work.
You guys know about the Sven went on Summoning Insight thing, right? Where he said that I slammed tables. I talked about this on my alt stream, so I'm only going to respond to it because it was something that he said, right? Sven isn't technically lying, right? He's technically not lying at C9, okay? But I know what he's referring to. I know what he's talking about, and I also know that technically it should still exist because everything gets recorded. What ended up happening is that we realized that yes, Winsome was constantly having very, very late mythics as an enchanter, right? He was having very late mythics. And I realized it was because he was perma-buying 2 control words, no matter what, every single recall, and then he would just place them and it would actually die 5 seconds later. And I would ask him to defend the points, which he couldn't, right? Then one scrim after draft, go sit back down, we're all talking, etc. And normally what happens is all the coaches are in a circle, right? Half circle around the television. I ask Autumn and Revan about the control words that game, right? Autumn was supposed to be counting the control words. He said he wasn't doing it because he wasn't explicitly told to do it that game. And then I had asked Revan a question about doing some part of the review about one of the laners. I can't remember what it was. Both of them told me that they weren't doing it because they weren't explicitly told to do it before the draft or something like that. Even though I thought it was already just established, this is something we're going to keep doing until it's fixed. So when they basically just told me that they weren't doing anything, but just like watching the scrim almost as like observing, right? I got really pissed, and the same way that you guys see me on stream, I smack my desk. Like when you see me deal with like really toxic like chatters or something, I just smacked my desk with my 4 fingers extended, right? I smacked the desk that I'm sitting at, and I went to stand up, and Johnny, the team manager, is in like the kitchen cutoff. He turns around like he thinks something is going to escalate or something is going to get bigger. Max waves his hand down at Johnny like it's fine, and then so it goes me, Sven in a chair, Max, Revan, and Autumn at the end. And Sven was there for that. So it was about Winsome's control wards, and then I got up and I went over towards like where the bathroom thing is, and I pressed my hand against the wall, and I was just tilted because it was like I don't know how long we were into the game at that point when I asked that question. And then I just started looking at I believe the monitor, because Summit's monitor was angled. So that's the only incident thing where that happened. But that's the only thing that happened. Like, but the problem is that people take the statement that he made, which again is not wholly untrue, right? I did smack a table, right? But it's interpreted like I'm like fucking like monkey ooga ooga, like banging on the table or like shaking it, or like while Winsome's there that I'm fucking shaking it and whatever.
The dark side of Liandry refers to the discussion about Liandry's Torment and Morella Nomenicum. You know, the debate that branded LS as Liandry Salesman? This specific term refers to how LS suffered from anxiety attacks and other mental misgivings during many of his controversial takes on League. One of the biggest incidents of this was how a 27-minute video posted by the Marks titled Debunking Morello's versus Liandry's discussing analyst behavior. This video, which insinuated that it was going to debunk the debate, was an obvious criticism directed towards LS by having him in the thumbnail and featuring his viewpoint on the debate only, effectively a personal attack masqueraded as an analysis. Moreover, the video would go on to strawman LS's argument on the debate, basically arguing against something that isn't argued for. In this video, the Mark showcased examples of where Morella is better than Liandry in a vacuum, which was never an argument made by LS. The first 24 minutes of the video attacked a viewpoint which wasn't the case, while the 3 last minutes of the video is where LS got very angry and said some pretty explicit stuff about another person, as the Morella versus Liandry argument was once again misconstrued, which made Ellis frustrated. After the stream, Ellis felt really bad about this and proceeded to delete the clips in the stream, which the Marks lacked to include in the video. Nevinyrral's disc refers to another Magic the Gathering card. It is about the mage Nevinyrral, whose final act of spite was to make sure that all of his magic was destroyed along with him. As such, we have his disc, which destroys all artifacts, creatures, and enhancements. Basically, your equivalence of a nuclear bomb of sorts. You see, Ellis has many times said that there's a lot of bad things occurring behind the scene of esports, and he has even had stuff like that happen to himself, such as the G2 scandal, or when he had the Tolkien incident, who revealed a lot of corruption or mistreating management from Fnatic. In a tweet-longer post on July 3rd, 2020, Ellis said that there is so much more I want to say about corruption, bullying, harassment, abuse, and other things all going on inside of the scene, but I want to talk about it another time, including some of my own accounts. This is something Ellis has also echoed at other times, insinuating that a lot of fire can be started. In a future podcast with Don Jake and his quote-unquote final stream, he echoed the same rhetoric, but never mentioned anything specific. He has said though that he will do a part 2 to this final stream, being more in depth. This leads to the idea that a nuclear bomb of the many evil behind the scenes incidents may be coming sometime in the future. The child abuse chapter and the game ending himself chapter goes hand in hand almost. As I mentioned some time ago, Ellis has been very open about himself as a person, thus we know a lot of things about his life that he has stated publicly. One of the issues Ellis faced in his adolescent years effectively amounts to child abuse. Ellis would have a really bad uprising due to various reasons, such as his father being out and in of his life frequently. His mom would also neglect him as a child many times, seeing him as a problematic child rather than a person to love. This train of thought also were present in his mom's side of the family. His mom would later be estranged in Ellis's life. After the age of 13, his life would become even more grim than it was before. He would up his therapy hours, probably by the behest of his family, to 20 to 30 hours a week. He would also have other hospitalizations and game-ending himself thoughts. Somewhere around 7th grade, Ellis dropped out of school due to a court order. His extremely rough upbringing has had an adverse effect on him today. I won't attempt to psychoanalyze him as it's entirely out of my depth, but after knowing about this sad tale, it's hard to not feel afflicted, because Ellis was taken advantage of later in life as well, and his rationalization process and his way of feeling extreme compassion due to his strife in early adolescence and homelessness has, for example, caused people to steal money from him. One such example is of course the Sky Williams incident recently, where Sky still owes Ellis and Divers money. That marks the end of the Iceberg meme, but if I missed something you think is pivotal in his long career, let me know in the comments below. Check out my other socials, Twitch and Twitter, and if you want to support, make sure to check out my Patreon. If you liked the video, make sure to subscribe, and if you didn't like the video, he is a US-Canadian dual citizen from California who played StarCraft